Welcome to Eat, Drink, Cruise, a podcast that supports and is really solely focused on the amazing food and beverage experiences at sea across all the cruise lines in the industry and the people that really make it happen. CLIA, the industry's Cruise Lines Association, recently said they expect 12% growth of passengers cruising in 2024. That's 4 million new cruisers cruising on cruise ships this year, which is really quite amazing. So why do people take cruises? Well, for me and for most, I believe it's the incredible dining and beverage that you can experience on board. So we talk to the interesting people that make it happen and all the behind-the-scenes stories you get with that. Tune in weekly to Eat, Drink, Cruise, a podcast that I host. My name is Ken Taylor, and welcome to the show. Today we have Norwegian Cruise Line with us. They just announced a bunch of new itineraries this last week throughout Asia, Australia, New Zealand. The cruise line continues to build new beautiful ships and continue their role as a major player in the cruise industry. But we talk food and beverage on this podcast, and so I am really excited to have with me today the VP of Food and Beverage for Norwegian Cruise Line, Christian Pratsch. Thank you for joining the show, Christian.
Thank you for having me.
This is great. I had to mention this. I looked at your LinkedIn a few weeks back, and I was just kind of getting prepared to talk with you, although you are, and your team is a client of Market Team, so we do obviously work with you. But I looked on your LinkedIn page, and crafter of gastronomic marvels, masterfully blending vision, artistry, passion, and flavor. Where did we get this from, Christian? This is awesome. You're a passionate guy.
I am very passionate, and little does LinkedIn obviously reveal of what I have done. But in context, obviously, it helps what I'm in charge of and for the little experience or exposure that I had. Truthfully, I come from a hotel and resort background, small world in context to what I'm currently doing for the scale. So To me, it was just fitting to call it gastronomic marvels. And here we are.
Well, you are a culinarian by trade, and we'll get to that in just a bit. But you do oversee several hundred bars with your team, Luis Ortega, obviously, and your team running Beverage, and Josh on the restaurant side. So many great people on your team. But because of that, you must enjoy the bars as well and what's going on there, and we'll talk about that. But I have to ask you what your favorite cocktail is. This is something we ask on the show.
Thank you. I do eat and drink for a living. So Obviously, I'm naturally exposed to all the good things. I consider myself privileged. I have mostly made old-fashioned my choice, and only recently discovered that there is not only whiskey and or the difference between the bourbon and the rye, but coming or living in Miami for almost or a little bit over 7 years now, I'm adding rum to it, and I enjoy it more and more and drink responsibly.
Yeah, I mean, some say rum plays very well to that style of cocktail. It's maybe a little nicer depending on the bourbon or what you're using versus a corn or a grain based spirit. Then you can do some really cool twists with a rum old fashioned. I mean, in the fall, and a cider, apple cider syrup replaces the simple syrup that you might use. You can make it really fun, garnish with apple. Right now, that's an on trend drink, so you're on trend, which is I'm drinking those from time to time as well. Are you a cocktail guy, a beer guy, wines? What's your go-to typically?
Wine probably more so than any of the other cocktails. I'm getting my feet wet, no pun intended. But I really do not discriminate. I have a passion for exploring and or exploration, seeing what is out there, what I have not discovered. And I'm very open-minded to that aspect. I keep on trying, the other go-to cocktail, Negroni, and or have to say that I'm still finding it difficult getting used to the bitters. So it was just last week that I've been on our ship sailing out of New York to Bermuda, Norwegian Joy, and tried our Bliss Boulevardier that has obviously also had some renaissance, I would say. And I'm still, I still choose an old fashioned thereafter.
Yeah, for sure. So, with your cruising and obviously looking after the fleet, you've been with Norwegian since 2017. You mentioned 7 years. and you're a hotel guy by trade, like myself. Spent a lot of time in some luxury, beautiful properties, including the Mandarin Oriental. I think the one in Miami too, correct?
No, not. I mean, I've visited, but I was in charge of the culinary operation in New York for three
Oh, for
years,
New York.
just before I started at NCL.
And you've come up through professionally since the late '90s. You've been focused in food and beverage. Even spent a little time in Dubai.
That is true.
When was
That
that?
is true.
What did you do?
So I started with an apprenticeship in Germany, where I'm originally from. I actually did compulsory military service that is not
Oh,
done
okay.
any longer. Found my way to a sea vessel or the navy. Went on small ships, and then while I did my master chef degree in Germany, I found passion to see what is happening around the world. It was around 2004, so 20 years ago, that the Burj Al Arab was the go-to and still has obviously a great reputation. And I was able to have an opportunity to experience that for a short term. It was not a long-lived career, I would say, that I'm proud of, but it was a great experience to be exposed to a new world, to new cultures, and certainly a higher standard to that point that was very prominent.
And you spent some time with the World
Yes.
Residences at Sea. Tell me about what that was like. I've known a couple of people involved with that business, but I just wonder what that business is like. What was that about?
The world is truly unique still to its day, the only residential ship. Obviously, there are a lot of projects and ventures coming along for the near future. But my time I really cherish as something that I could have never expected due to the expansive itineraries and the discerning or discriminating travelers, actually residents, right? Because they never change. I've been exposed to regional and seasonal cuisine like I would have never previously imagined.
Mhm.
I literally put aside recipe books and encyclopedias as we emerge, or we were able to, with an average 2.5 days in port, able to go to the fishmongers, to the farmers market, to mingle with the locals, to really also learn from the residents, because they are or have been already traveling a lot. They gave me a lot of humbling experience in telling me how a recipe is supposed to be, and you quickly learn about your skills and or your knowledge, and how you can contribute to this amazing environment of great personalities. If I wasn't married at that time, I would probably still be there.
Oh, really? Now, so is it like a big club in a sense? I
It
ran
is.
a sports club as part of a hotel in Dallas with the Four Seasons, and I remember the expectations that were placed in front of me on a daily basis from every single member. Is it like that? They literally feel like they own the joint.
It is very much like that. A club represents or resembles very much what is there. The fact that you interact with them throughout the day, every day, and for the future, as long as you're obviously on board. Some of them live there full time. Others, during my tenure, I have never seen, but I know they were owners. And again, just through interaction, you learn quickly their preferences and their needs and wants, and adjust to everything there without disclosing obviously what it is. We had a lot of freedom and or flexibility in terms of the product sourcing, and we operated under, at that time, and they still do, I know for a fact, best of the best mentality. So
Mhm.
in all of that, from the simple ingredients to exotic itineraries and the resources there, everything came to play there.
So in culinary, obviously, and we talked about your hotel background, it's a major push on a daily basis to be a chef in a hotel, particularly like the Mandarin Oriental, where it's a luxury product and the expectations are super high. Before you sort of joined Norwegian Cruise Line from a culinary standpoint, you were enjoying the concept of that with the thinking of, hey, this is more of a corporate job, right? So this isn't going to necessarily mean I'm in the kitchen all day long, putting out dinner and then prepping for breakfast and banquets and everything else that you have to do. So that was a big plus for you. I understand it worked well because you're not only based in Miami, but you're a Floridian and you love to scuba dive. Tell me
That
about
is correct. I like to say, or the story goes somewhere along the lines of having a beverage in cold and snowy New York in the winter months and dreaming of going scuba diving every weekend while having a Monday to Friday job. So
And it happened.
um,
You got it.
I,
Kind of. Kind of.
I was sold immediately, and half luck, half brains. Put me obviously in a good position where I'm now at, combining a little bit of the passion or both of having a great responsibility, but also seeing the life after work from a different perspective.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about some of our conversation earlier about Florida. I didn't realize how much of a dive kind of capital it is with the reefs and all that. So, I mean, it's obviously when you look at it on a map, it clearly could be great, especially with the Keys and all of that. But that's your preference for diving in Florida, or do you have other places you go?
The diving or seeing what is out there is an endless bucket list, really.
Hmm.
As we're surrounded by water, and the majority of this planet, blue planet, is water. So, as I've chosen, or my wife and I, we've chosen to make Miami or Florida our home. We're also privileged to have access within a short driving distance to world class diving. This never gets old. Every day and or every dive is a great experience, and from there you just build on and see what would you like to explore. I kind of like to compare it to going to a museum, but you also have, aside from the natural aspect, obviously, to seeing large pelagics or any of the smaller creatures, there are some incredible wrecks that you would not see or could experience on the surface the way that we do, floating in the water and experience that from a 3D
Yeah.
perspective.
So it's cool that actually you work for a cruise line in a sense because my recollection is the travel was tremendous, right? So the difference or trade off from the hotel industry is long hours, multiple days per week, or no days off. In the cruise industry, while you may be in a corporate job, you do have to travel. You just mentioned you were
Correct.
on
Yeah.
Joy. So actually, it might give you a chance to see some really cool destinations from a diving standpoint if you can squeeze a couple of extra days in, right? What is your travel schedule like now? You're VP of Food and Beverage. You recently moved from leading culinary for the prior sort of 6 years plus. And so here you are in this capacity. Are you traveling as much or do you have that responsibility? What's it like?
It is a huge responsibility for the fact that we sometimes get caught up managing from behind the desk, but our product is actually on the water, and it's very important to us. And I make it a point to the team that we do get out and see what is happening there, and be interactive and also understand our product a little bit better, interact with the guests, make sure that what we are what we have hoped to put in place, that is actually also in place. So to answer your question, I travel about 30% of the year, but that is 100 to 120 days, not consecutive. But our biggest travel commitment really comes with new builds that we're anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, also not consecutively, but mostly after delivery from the yard and with all the training that is happening. And after that, it's some corporate events and menu rollouts and or some changes that we're doing to our offering.
Yeah, and it's those menu changes that probably help you get to some of the other ships, right? Because and obviously you did a lot of this, running culinary, but when there's new ships, we run to those, and in my experience, to those ships, but we can't forget about the other ships, right?
Correct. Exactly.
And then you end up consuming those days per year, and you're like, oh, I still got to do all of these other, and usually really interesting itineraries, some of those other ships, right? Because
And sometimes you're just surprised when you go back to a ship and it only feels like it was yesterday, and somebody tips you on the shoulder and say, "Hey, it was great seeing you 5 years ago." Like,
and
oh man, has it been that long?
and they tell you the actual date and
Yeah.
time that they saw you,
But
which
but
is
to the
always,
point, that we need to get out more, and
yeah,
30% of travel might not even be enough. So something to explore.
yeah. And you're married, and she's okay with it. You've been married like 23 years or something like that.
Yes, yeah. Thank you for remembering. We actually met on a ship.
Oh, really?
Yes, on Sea Cloud 2 at that time, out of all places in Nice, France.
Oh,
So she was a service stewardess. I started in the galley, and we ever stayed together since then. So she does understand the industry
That's the
very
best part.
well,
That's the
and
best
it's a big plus to, obviously having an appreciation for long days or weeks, and we, ever since we knew each other and didn't learn it differently, have worked every holiday, every weekend, every time that the majority of the population would celebrate and we were delivering. But there are also other times where we could catch up and make the most out of it.
Yeah,
Work hard and play hard.
absolutely. So it's great to have someone from the industry. They understand your pain, your challenges,
Blood,
what's
sweat, and
going on.
tears.
Well, let's talk about Norwegian Cruise Line for a moment. I can call it NCL or what's the? I've never asked anybody if it's cool to
Yes,
NCL.
absolutely. No, it's correct, and it's very important to not put a plural S, because it's Norwegian Cruise Line, singular.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I'm just curious from your standpoint, particularly both operationally today, but culinarily, going back to I think it was 2000, Norwegian Cruise Line launched freestyle. Back then, it was a big deal because I remember I had joined the industry in 2004, and there was a lot of reference to Norwegian Cruise Line and the freestyle concept with multiple dining venues and also a space like a main dining room. If you were to kind of fast forward to now, would you say that freestyle is significantly different than what everybody's doing with the my times and the select and the your times and everybody's times dining? How is it different still? Is it more unique, slightly unique? What do you think?
As the innovator in global cruise travel, Norwegian Cruise Line has been breaking boundaries and pioneering, leading experiences at sea for over 50 years. We as a brand continue to serve as an industry leader, continuously raising the standards of contemporary cruising with award-winning and varied food and beverage concepts. We revolutionized dining at sea by introducing the first specialty dining, and by introducing freestyle dining concept, which allowed guests to enjoy the no set dining times.
Mhm.
As part of our guest first philosophy, we put the guest at the forefront of all of our decisions, and their feedback plays a critical role in helping guide how we develop and evolve our F&B offerings. Because we understand that when the guest is front and center, everyone wins. I cannot speak obviously for other cruise lines. The freestyle dining is working very well for us, and we do have a lot of flexibilities for that matter. So I'm cautiously optimistic that this continues to be the way to go.
Yeah, and then you're innovating other areas too. I mean, the Thrillplex, the work that's going on with Great Stirrup Cay. I know that's a big focus for you guys. Having been recently on your ships, thank you for that opportunity. And a few other times on various inaugurals and whatnot. I mean, the ships are absolutely beautiful. I mean, that's
Thank you.
one thing that when people ask me, so you've seen a few of the brands we have. Market team has, multiple cruise line clients and the ships at Norwegian Cruise Line are, I think the word that one of my team members uses is opulent. For some reason, that's the word he goes to. They really are beautiful. And the venues themselves are stunning. And having done a lot of this work in the past, when I met one of your team members who runs the restaurant side of the business or front of the house, I mean, it's pretty impeccable, actually. The tabletop, the beauty that's put in, the detail that's put into each of the concepts. So clearly, from a specialty concept, but then also from just a main, classic dining standpoint, you definitely have some, amazing products out there. 20 ships, is that correct? How many
That
ships?
is the correct. Number 20 is coming out, Norwegian Aqua, sailing spring of 2025. As you said, we're pushing the boundaries of traditional cruise cuisine and feature a broad variety of high quality dining experience. Our brand first innovation, the Indulge Food Hall, and the multiple specialty dining restaurants, with the Prima class, Norwegian Prima, Norwegian Viva, and now number 3 in the series of 6, Norwegian Aqua coming out. We certainly want to connect to that standard and hold it up high.
Yeah. I was just on a competitor ship this last week for vacation. My son, who's 21, wanted to enjoy the beverage packages at that age. And so,
Rightfully.
yeah. And The world of beverage packaging is a whole nother conversation that I have
Absolutely.
my new thoughts on, having experiences. But, June, July is a heavy time for cruising, particularly with kids and families. And so, this ship was just packed. The one takeaway someone mentioned to me yesterday, hey, didn't you just for a moment stop and go, wow, the industry is really, really moving. It is full throughout the brands, the most part, I believe, and everybody is building, which is great. So, yeah, expect to see some people in June and July when families are cruising together, right? For Norwegian, what's happening now that you think is really exciting for your brand, particularly on the food and beverage side, of course?
I think the outlook is just very exciting, and I even through our previous conversations, I called it a bright future. NCL has recently announced the addition of a new class coming out from 2030, as well as the expansion on the island, as you mentioned, which unfortunately I cannot detail and or reveal a
No.
little bit
Okay.
more. But the fact that we keep innovating and that we're pushing the boundaries, having the guest at the forefront of our decisions, we understand that there is also a need for continuation and or future development. Our new concept on Norwegian Aqua will be Thai focused as much as Asian cuisines are adopted and were widely known. Now we feel comfortable and have done our work and legwork, I would say, to putting something out that is new and innovative and certainly will be enjoyed by our guests. There are many more of these ideas that will come to life in the near future. So, with that being said, I can only advise to be on the lookout for
Yeah.
all the new reveals.
Well, having been on one of your newer ships recently, the one concept I thought was really cool is the food hall. Is it Indulge? Is that the name?
That is correct. Indulge Food Hall.
And what I love about this concept is it's technically driven in the sense that it's on the table using classic menu point of sale technology. So you can place your order, you can browse cuisine types, right? So now you can really look at specifically what you might be interested in. Your buffet dining and other cruise lines buffet dining, there's some real work being done, to create those unique differences in the cuisine types and really inspire people to go, wow, that's really amazing. A lot of cooking before your eyes too, which takes place in that if you want to walk around, you see that, but you can order that from the table and it gets delivered. Not a crazy new concept if you've been in any airport, like an OTG airport, which is a food operator in airports, where they're using those pads for delivery, and it worked perfectly fine. I think you and I have talked about this. It takes a few years for the cruise lines to catch up.
It's a very valid point, in terms of catching up with what is happening shoreside. I'm not going to quote or put on record what we discussed in terms of the timeline, but some of that needs to be appreciated by our way of installments and or how actually the ship is built, and taking a venue out of operation to refurbish and or rebuild is something that can only be done while in port. Any of that, and for those that are listening and are not new to cruise, they're well aware. But to all the others, there's no open flame allowed. So with that being said, no welding, no cutting that can have sparks. But to connect back to what you said, the Indulge Food Hall, which we started with Norwegian Prima and also now on board Viva, I think where you experienced the concept has been a huge success on board of both of these ships. And, with the continuation, obviously, for the next ship as well, bringing an exciting new offering to round out our complimentary dining lineup. That also needs to be said that the 11 venues that we feature there, from, smokehouse to rotisserie to name a letter, really, and changing
Mhm.
menus for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, providing our guests with a taste of the world through the variety of the cuisines and the menu options. And that brought together with, like you said, the tablets, which really enables us to carve out a little bit time, because the service, I like to think the service times are almost unmatched. where the guest sees already what they get by a picture on the tablet. They know what to expect, and it's delivered super fast by cutting out the ordering aspect of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
service there.
I was, like I said, I was impressed with that. I know the team we were with was really like, wow, this is really cool. Of course, the next thought is, is there a need to go outside of the venue and start delivering all over? I think we have to keep that in question, a little bit with the demand and how that demand. You and I talked a little bit about demand. Does everybody deserve to be on a Norwegian Cruise Line ship or a Royal Caribbean or a Princess ship, or is the industry really segmenting for all guests? How do you see the growth part of the industry? And I'm talking about the whole overall industry.
Mm. I mean, holistically, or as a whole, the cruise line industry is really small in comparison. And I can only reference Clea, who has done some great work in obviously portraying what the overall size is. Although we have double-digit growth coming up for travelers in our segment or our target customer, we still only serve 1% of the U.S. population. So there's huge potential in continuing growth, and it also shows in our public information what the lookout might be for that. I like to say that cruising has been, as it started, has a certain offering and or value proposition, and with obviously traveling and only unpacking once but being in different ports every other day, there are so many things to discover. And obviously by the different personas and or the segments that we're targeting, still for a lot of customers and especially new guests, new entries, to experience what cruising is about. There's a little bit of a stereotype that even when I talk to anyone new to cruising, or we get into a conversation, what is it like to be on a vessel, as you just hinted, with 4,000 or 5,000 plus passengers that you share on such a confined space. There are a tremendous amount of venues and or timings, I would say, where everything is separated so much that you might not need to experience the overcrowded buffet or the overcrowded theater or whatever it might be. And with that being said, with all the excursions that are happening, I can only encourage for anyone that has not thought about cruising to really look into the destinations, the food offerings, whatever you might please. Maybe it's F&B, maybe it's spa, maybe it's excursions, and choose wisely. I cannot get on record, obviously, who I think is the best. I might hint, talking about where I'm at and where we're going, but the competition is fierce, and I applaud everyone in our industry in making it a great industry to be known about and really embrace what we can deliver, easily competing with any shoreside operation.
Yeah. What's interesting for me, having a more adult growing family, as I mentioned, my son who's 21, my daughter's 27. I did think about that for a second. They're cruisers since they were two. They're definitely understanding what cruise experience should be traditionally, all of those things. But I think even like with my son, in the 20s and 30s, early 30s, it'll be interesting to see how we evolve that product, for that customer, because they may know and have been brought up in cruising with their family, but in order to retain them and attract them, it'll be interesting. And I'm sure, the marketing teams and everyone else are trying to figure that out, right? What does tomorrow's customer really look like?
Yeah, it's true.
Retain all this stuff that we've built online. That's, I'm sure, something you guys are talking about.
That is correct. And, we just had an investor day that is still, the recording is still available. I encourage everyone that has not seen it, what NCL is doing in charting the course. Vacation better, experience more is something that we hold up now as a new headline. Cool. And true to that promise, something that I can only repeat. Please come and sail with NCL.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me on this podcast. Super smart guy. Coming up from culinary. Not everybody in running cruise lines have come through the culinary ranks like yourself, which is great. An MBA. I mean, you're super established, and I really, really look forward to seeing what you and your team are able to continue to do with Norwegian Cruise Line.
Thank you so much, Ken. Thank you.
Thanks for chatting. We'll talk soon.